Welcome back to another story on Whispered Tales. Now, let's dive into today's story.
The garage door slammed shut behind Evelyn Marlowe with a metallic clang that made her flinch. The December air in the Seattle suburbs was sharp and cold, carrying the damp scent of asphalt mixed with pine from the lawn out front. She pulled her ash-gray wool coat tighter and clutched an old wooden letter box. Its lid still bore her late husband Richard's handwriting, the last fragile thread connecting her to the life they'd shared. The door leading into the kitchen was suddenly locked. The motion light above the porch flicked on, and from the doorbell camera came a familiar but strangely distant voice. "Please step away from the door. You do not have access." Evelyn drew in a deep breath. She had only been out for a 15-minute walk around the neighborhood, just as her doctor had recommended, and now her own house, the home she'd lived in for 30 years, was shutting her out. She pressed the doorbell again, her fingers trembling from cold and anger. Through the frosted glass, she saw a faint movement, a shadow, like someone deciding whether or not to answer a stranger. The door opened a crack. Vanessa stood there in a cream turtleneck sweater, her softly waved brown hair styled like she'd just come back from the salon. Behind her gleamed a renovated kitchen with quartz countertops, something Evelyn had never approved spending money on, though lately she'd given up fighting most battles. On the dining table, a laptop glowed with rows of figures pulsing red and green, the new heartbeat of a house that no longer moved in rhythm with hers. "Didn't you get my message?" Vanessa asked, not exactly a greeting. Her tone was gentle, but Evelyn knew that the sharpest knives often came wrapped in silk. "What message?" Evelyn asked, lifting the letter box slightly, as if it could shield her. "The one about moving out," came a man's voice from behind Vanessa. Caleb appeared, buttoning the sleek blazer that made him look every bit the rising tech entrepreneur. He was the kind of man who always looked straight at the camera during group photos, eyes bright with calculation. "We sent an email, and a message in the family chat," he said smoothly. "Today's the day your access was revoked. We've booked you a room at the extended stay hotel. The first 2 weeks are already paid for." The words washed over Evelyn like dry leaves skimming across water. Access, hotel, paid for. She tried to smile, a polite reflex meant to keep things civilized. "This is my home," she said slowly. "I was only gone 15 minutes. Vanessa sighed. "Mom, please don't make a scene at the door. We've already been through this. Dad's attorney, well, the court's executor, made it clear, the will leaves me and Caleb $15 million. I'm the one responsible for managing the estate, including this house. You shouldn't be under stress right now." Caleb leaned forward, the courteous smile of someone who'd read too many LinkedIn articles about handling difficult conversations. "Evelyn, this really is for your own good. We reviewed your medical notes, you've been forgetful, signing the wrong papers. We're worried. Moving you to a professional care facility." "Professional care?" Evelyn cut him off, feeling a spark of heat rise in her chest. "You just locked me out of my own house." "Don't say locked," Caleb corrected, raising a hand like a man lecturing about cloud access control. "We just changed permissions. It's for your safety. And about that withdrawal from the joint account last week." Evelyn's face flushed. "That was my pension money. I needed to pay bills." Vanessa glanced at Caleb, then back at her mother. "Mom, since Dad passed, things have changed. His new estate plan gave me responsibility. I have the legal right. You're just making things harder for everyone." Richard's name hit Evelyn like a blade. Since the morning he'd passed away, a quiet morning when his heart simply stopped after years of carrying secrets from work, the house had filled with other people's voices, contractors, financial advisors, Caleb's friends, and stacks of cardboard boxes labeled Simplify. They'd replaced the sofa, changed the curtains, turned Richard's study into a yoga room. Meanwhile, the wedding photos were packed into a brown box, just like the one she held. "You're kicking me out?" Evelyn asked. Her voice wasn't angry. It was simply tired. Please don't put it like that, Vanessa said, her eyes glistening, not with tears, but the reflex of someone who feels cornered. I love you, Mom. You know that. But I also have a family now, responsibilities. I can't let everything spiral out of control. Caleb interjected briskly, we've got a Zoom meeting at 2. If you could just pack the essentials, we've already boxed most of your things. Your suitcase is right here. He pointed toward a sleek black case by the counter. The Uber's on its way. Evelyn looked at the suitcase, new, shiny, and empty of history. It didn't smell like old wood or Richard's paper letters. It smelled like nothing at all. She set Richard's letter box on the table and sat down, trying to preserve a fragment of the old afternoon rhythm, make tea, slice bread, listen to Sinatra on the vintage radio Richard had loved. Vanessa stiffened. Don't sit down, Mom, she said softly but firmly. I don't want the neighbors calling the police. The neighbors? Evelyn gave a dry laugh. What are they going to do? Handcuff your mother? You're trespassing, Caleb said coldly. That's the legal term. The word hit her like a blow, trespassing. For a fleeting second, everything blurred. Evelyn saw Vanessa at 10 years old, in her blue school dress, pouting because she couldn't take her kitten along. The little girl had clung to her hand and said, I'm scared, Mommy. Now that same girl was pushing her mother out of her own home. Fine, Evelyn said at last. She stood, her knees aching, but her back straight. I'll go. But you'll have to live with this. Vanessa's lips parted, perhaps to say something kinder, then closed again. Caleb stepped toward the door, calling over his shoulder, Uber's here, honey. Just then, the doorbell rang again, different chime, lighter tone. Not the Uber. Vanessa reached for the handle, but Evelyn was faster. She opened the door to find Attorney Daniel Brooks standing on the porch, rain dripping from his coat, a thick envelope in hand and a worn brown briefcase by his side. His sharp eyes flicked past Vanessa and Caleb before settling on Evelyn, as if he'd just stepped into a photograph mid-burn. Mrs. Marlowe, he said, breath clouding in the cold air. Thank God I made it in time. Caleb straightened instantly, voice turning polished. Oh, hello, Mr. Brooks. We're in the middle of some family business. You can leave the papers with me. Mr. Hartman, Daniel interrupted without looking at him. He stepped over the threshold as though no barrier could stop what needed to be done. I need to speak with Mrs. Marlowe. And I suggest you both listen. Vanessa folded her arms, eyes narrowing. If this is about Dad's will, we've already. It is about the will, Daniel said, placing his briefcase on the new quartz counter and opening it. My apologies for the delay. There were conditions Mr. Richard Marlowe instructed me not to disclose until certain events occurred. Evelyn gripped the chair for balance. What conditions, Daniel? That the will was intentionally misinterpreted, Daniel said, drawing out a stack of papers, and that the secondary heirs have violated its moral clause. Vanessa laughed sharply. Oh, please. You can't be serious. I've spoken with my own advisors. Daniel glanced at her, his politeness gone. Miss Marlowe, you may consult whoever you wish. But I drafted Richard Marlowe's final will. This is the authenticated copy, notarized, digitally certified, and stored in the court's vault since the day of his passing. To summarize, the house and 70% of the estate belong to his wife, Evelyn Marlowe. $5 million are left to you, Miss Marlowe, on the condition that you honor and care for your mother during the period of mourning and until the estate is settled. That condition, he said, eyes narrowing, has been gravely violated. Silence cracked the air like glass. Caleb took half a step forward. You can't measure respect. It's subjective. How do you prove that? Daniel pulled out a small envelope and set it on the table. Messages, emails, and a neighborhood police report from 5 days ago regarding a forced lockout. The evidence shows deliberate isolation and deprivation, under state law, that qualifies as elder abuse. Vanessa's face drained of color. Are you threatening us? I'm executing a will, Daniel replied, his voice calm but hammer-hard. From this moment on, all decisions concerning the Marlowe estate require Mrs. Evelyn's consent. Your $5 million share is revoked and reassigned to her, as per the contingency clause. Evelyn felt her heartbeat slow, steady, strong, alive in a way it hadn't been for months. She looked at Vanessa, the little girl who'd once feared getting lost, and saw now a woman lost in ambition she couldn't control. No, Vanessa whispered, then louder, no. You can't just show up and say that. Dad promised. Daniel's voice softened, briefly. Your father didn't make promises. He left records. He believed that any promise worth keeping should come with proof. Caleb was already calculating. He pulled out his phone, typing furiously. I'll have my attorney verify the digital hash. We'll sue. You're welcome to try, Daniel said, sliding the papers toward Evelyn. But read the injunction clause carefully. Any interference during dispute renders you liable to the court. Evelyn sat, her chair, this time. She placed her palm on the cold quartz, feeling its firmness like a vow. Daniel, she said quietly, do you have a copy for me? I do. He handed her a folder. And, with your permission, I'd like to bring someone else into this, Special Agent Myachin of the FBI. Caleb froze. FBI? You're joking. Daniel shut his briefcase. Your husband, Mrs. Marlowe, collaborated with federal investigators in his final years. There are funds whose origins outsiders might misunderstand. It's best if the right people handle them. Vanessa's voice cracked. FBI? Why? I haven't done anything wrong. I just wanted what was mine. Evelyn felt the urge to comfort her, to brush back her hair as she used to when Vanessa was feverish. But she kept her hand still. Vanessa, she said softly, you already have everything, a husband, a home, a chance to do right. You don't need to take what's left from your mother. Vanessa's jaw trembled, her eyes flashing defiance. You always thought I wasn't enough, didn't you? Always taking Dad's side. But I know where you're weak, Mom. You hate being alone. And I used that too. She stopped, horrified by her own words. Caleb cut in sharply. That's enough. He turned to Daniel. You have no authority here. This meeting is over. On the contrary, Daniel said evenly. It begins now. He looked to Evelyn. Mrs. Marlowe, what would you like to do? Evelyn thought of all the times she'd stayed silent, thinking peace was worth the price of surrender. She thought of Richard's hand in hers at the hospital, and his final whisper, you're stronger than you think. She straightened, eyes clear. I want you both to leave my house, she said, each word steady as nails in wood. Now. And you'll take nothing that belongs to Richard or me. Daniel will inventory the assets. If necessary, I'll call the police. Vanessa gaped. Caleb's eyes narrowed, measuring defeat. Daniel nodded, like a referee hearing the bell ring clean. Fine, Caleb said at last, lips pressed thin. We'll go. But this isn't over. You're right, Evelyn replied. It's just beginning. Outside, the Uber had arrived, not for Evelyn, as they'd planned, but for them. Vanessa picked up her purse, hesitated at the door, and turned back for one brief, trembling glance. You'll regret this, Mom, she said, though it sounded like she was speaking to herself. When the door closed behind them, the house fell silent. Rain tapped steadily on the porch roof. Evelyn's knees shook, but she stood firm. Daniel gathered his papers and handed her a business card. Special Agent Chin will be in touch, he said. There are things about Richard you'll need to know. But first, change the smart lock password. Evelyn nodded, a tired but genuine smile breaking through. She opened Richard's letterbox. On top was an old photo, two of them standing before the house when it was new, the sold sign freshly taken down. She sat, took out Richard's fountain pen, their wedding gift, and wrote on a blank sheet. Inventory, my house. Outside, night crept across the street. Inside the softly lit kitchen, a woman had just restored the heartbeat of her home. From that moment on, this was no longer about access rights or numbers on a spreadsheet, it was about reclaiming a voice that had been drowned out for too long. And tonight, that voice rang clear as a bell. The next morning, the pale winter sunlight filtered through the curtains, brushing faint silver lines across the traces of rain still glistening on the floor. Evelyn woke with an emptiness she could not quite name, as if the old world had been peeled away, leaving behind something raw and unprotected. The landline rang, a rare sound since Vanessa had switched everything over to Zoom and Slack. Evelyn reached for the receiver. "Mrs. Marlowe? This is Special Agent Maya Chen from the FBI Seattle Field Office. Attorney Brooks gave me your contact. Would you have a moment to speak?" The voice was calm, clipped, and carried a quiet authority. Evelyn agreed. 2 hours later, a black SUV pulled up outside the gate. A woman stepped out, tall and composed, her long coat fluttering in the cold breeze, a badge glinting against her chest. Her black hair was neatly pinned, and her eyes moved over the house with the precision of someone taking mental photographs. "Lovely place," Maya said, shaking Evelyn's hand. "And very quiet. I hope it stays that way, after today." Evelyn arched an eyebrow. "You're scaring me, Agent Chen." "No need to be scared, Mrs. Marlowe. I'm here to explain why your husband's name, Richard Marlowe, appears in our records, and why that $15 million was never investigated publicly." They sat in the living room. Richard's portrait hung above the mantel, his steady gaze seeming to follow every word. Maya opened her briefcase and drew out a thick envelope. "Mr. Marlowe once served as a financial consultant for several defense contractors," she began. "But in 2017, he discovered a vast money laundering network tied to bribery funds moving through shell corporations. He reported it and became a confidential informant for the FBI. His code name was Whispering Falcon." Evelyn froze. "Dear God. I never knew. He just said he had to travel sometimes, but I thought it was ordinary financial work." "That's what he wanted you to think," Maya said. "And with good reason. Some of the people involved were powerful. He helped us trace the money for 3 years. When the case was nearing its end, a corporate account under his name suddenly received $15 million, presented as a bonus, but we believe it was key evidence." "But Richard died, only 2 months later," Evelyn whispered. "And the funds disappeared right after," Maya said quietly. "We lost the trail, until it resurfaced in a will your daughter and her husband submitted to the court. A forged document. The digital signature had been tampered with." Evelyn felt her head spin. "You mean Vanessa and Caleb forged Richard's will?" "We can't yet prove who did it," Maya said evenly. "But the signature was a scanned image, and the digital hash had been wiped. That could only happen if someone had access to Richard's encrypted account. And who might that be, if not someone inside the house?" Evelyn lowered her gaze, her hands trembling. "You think they stole the money too?" "Not exactly," Maya said, her tone measured. "We believe the money is still hidden in an anonymous trust in the Cayman Islands. Caleb Hartman once worked for a fintech startup in San Francisco, developing a blockchain algorithm for transactional anonymity. We suspect he used that system to rebuild the laundering network Richard had exposed." Evelyn looked up, her eyes sharp now. "You think Richard found out about Caleb before he died?" Maya nodded. "We believe so. In an encrypted email recently decoded, Richard wrote to someone named DB, most likely Daniel Brooks. He said, 'If anything happens to me, make sure Eve is protected. The one I trusted most sleeps under my roof.'" Silence settled over the room. Outside, rain began again, soft as breath against the glass. Evelyn gave a brittle laugh. "The one he trusted most. Who did he mean?" "We think he meant Caleb," Maya replied. "Or maybe he was being ironic." Evelyn exhaled. Richard always had a fondness for wordplay. "But why did you say the house might not stay quiet after today?" "Because," Maya said, pulling out a small black device, "we found a hidden surveillance module in your home's security system. It's been transmitting data to an offshore server. The account holder's name is Caleb Hartman. A chill ran up Evelyn's spine. You mean? I'm still being watched. Most likely. But don't worry, we're dismantling every node. I just need your cooperation. Tonight, we may set a little trap. Evelyn looked at Richard's portrait again. In the kind smile she'd known for decades, she now saw the shadow at the corner of his eye, the mark of a man who had lived between two worlds, truth and deception. She clenched her fist. I'll do whatever it takes to end this. I owe him that much. That evening, the house glowed softly. Evelyn moved about the living room, rearranging photo frames, lighting a candle by the small altar, doing everything as though it were an ordinary night. Down in the basement, Maya and a team of FBI techs were setting up a counter-surveillance rig, turning the spy network into a listening trap. At precisely 8 p.m., a text appeared on Evelyn's phone. We need to talk. Vanessa. Evelyn looked at Maya, who gave a small nod. Answer her. Evelyn typed back, I'm always ready to talk, sweetheart. 10 minutes later, the sound of a car stopping at the gate. Vanessa entered, brushing snow from her coat, her face drawn and frightened. Mom, I didn't know it would go this far. Caleb said we just had to sign a few papers to make things legal. I don't want to go to jail. Evelyn's heart tightened. Are you here because you're afraid, or because you're sorry? Vanessa clutched her purse. Both. They say the FBI is investigating. You have to tell them I didn't mean it. Caleb said the money was Dad's, that it was all legal. He forced me to sign. Evelyn sighed softly. Then you need to tell them that. Who? Vanessa cried. The FBI? They'll lock me up. From behind the curtain, Maya stepped forward. Her tone was calm, controlled. No, Miss Marlowe. If you cooperate, we can protect you. But you have to tell us everything about Caleb Hartman. Vanessa recoiled, startled. Who let her in here? The same woman you threw out of her own home, Evelyn said quietly. And now she's trying to save you from yourself. Vanessa trembled. In the warm light she no longer looked like the confident woman from the day before, but like the scared little girl who used to clutch her mother's hand at school. He said the money was from Cayman accounts moved into a new fund. He told me it was an investment, for your future income. I swear, I didn't know it was dirty. Maya opened her laptop, showing Vanessa a photo, Caleb meeting with two Russian businessmen, their account codes matching 2018 laundering records. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. Oh God, he used me. And now, Maya said, you have the chance to make it right. Evelyn turned to Maya. What's the plan? We'll have her contact Caleb, Maya explained. Say that you, Evelyn, are willing to return the account access if he comes here tomorrow night. We'll wire the place for sound and video. If he confesses, we'll have our proof. Evelyn nodded. Vanessa's voice quivered. What if he realizes it's a setup? Then, Maya said flatly, he'll incriminate himself trying to prove otherwise. That's when we move in. When the team left, Evelyn stood alone by the window. Outside, snow was gathering on the path. In the glass reflection, she saw a silver-haired woman once cast out by her own child, now the center of a chess game even the FBI had to play carefully. On the table, her phone buzzed again. It'll all be over soon. See. Caleb. A second message followed almost instantly. He knows you're working with the FBI. Be careful. Unknown. Evelyn looked around. The house was silent, but the shadows seemed to move. She sat down and turned on Richard's old radio. Fly Me to the Moon floated through the room in a soft, vintage hum. She smiled faintly, whispering to the air. Richard, I'm in the middle of your chess game. I just hope I make the right move this time. By late afternoon, the sky over Seattle had turned the color of pewter. Fine strands of rain drifted across the window like smoke, cloaking the city in a dense stillness, as if the whole world were holding its breath. Evelyn Marlowe sat in the living room, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her house was no longer just a home, it was a battlefield. On the coffee table, a cup of Earl Grey sat untouched, the steam long gone. Beneath the lace tablecloth, a tiny microphone had been hidden. A miniature camera, disguised in a potted plant, faced the front door. Every device was now wired directly to a laptop in the FBI van parked 2 houses away. Maya Chen's voice came softly through Evelyn's earpiece. "Remember the signal. If you feel in danger, just say, 'The tea's gone cold.' We'll move in immediately." Evelyn nodded slightly, adjusting her collar. The house felt foreign, like a stage rebuilt for a play about life and death. Every tick of the clock tightened the air around her chest. In the kitchen, Vanessa waited, her eyes red-rimmed from a sleepless night. She wore a beige sweater, her face drawn but resolute. In her pocket, an FBI recording app ran silently. "He'll come," Vanessa whispered. "He hates losing control. When he hears you've agreed to return the account, he won't resist." Evelyn rested a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Don't be afraid, sweetheart. This time, we don't run." At 7 sharp, the sound of a luxury car's engine broke the stillness. Headlights flared through the curtains. The front door swung open. Caleb Hartman stepped inside, rain glistening on his dark overcoat, his face chiseled into that familiar mask of confidence. His gaze swept the room, taking in every detail that used to belong to his comfort. "Evelyn," he said evenly, "I'm glad you decided to be reasonable. We can end this peacefully." "You came alone?" Evelyn asked. "Of course. I'm a practical man," he said, smiling faintly as he pulled out a chair. "Vanessa told me you're ready to restore access to Richard's account?" Evelyn poured tea with calm precision. "Yes. I've thought it over. Richard trusted you. I just want peace, that's all." "And you'll have it," Caleb replied smoothly, placing a gold USB drive on the table. "Just sign this authorization. The Cayman funds will be transferred to the Hartman Marlowe Investment Trust. All legitimate. You'll even get monthly dividends." Evelyn looked at the small device, the weight of $15 million condensed into a sliver of metal. "You always did have a gift for making theft sound civilized," she murmured. Vanessa spoke up, voice trembling. "Caleb, are you sure this is right? The FBI's already investigating." He turned to her sharply, eyes narrowing. "You still haven't learned when to keep quiet, have you, Vanessa?" For a moment, the old terror returned to her face. She stepped back, her voice gone small. Caleb softened again, turning his polite smile toward Evelyn, as if remembering his performance. "Evelyn, I know you're upset. But Richard wasn't who you thought he was. He and I worked together on something special. That money wasn't dirty, it was a reward for protecting this country." Evelyn arched an eyebrow. "A reward? For what kind of protection?" "For intelligence work," Caleb said, eyes shining. "Richard collaborated with the agency. He couldn't tell you, but I can. The funds were compensation, hidden offshore for security reasons. I'm just fulfilling his legacy." "You talk like a hero," Evelyn said softly. "But last I checked, heroes don't hide money in the Caymans." Caleb's smile thinned, his fingers tightening around the USB. "You don't understand. The world is more complicated than you realize. I'm only ensuring that those who deserve power keep it. That's what Richard wanted." "Do you have proof?" Evelyn asked calmly. "Of course," Caleb said, opening his laptop and inserting the USB. "Everything's here." The screen lit up, then flickered. A small message appeared, "Recording in progress." Caleb froze, his pupils narrowing. "What the hell?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "The tea's gone cold." Instantly, the front door burst open. 2 FBI agents stormed in, weapons drawn. Maya Chen followed, voice steady and clear. "Caleb Hartman, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery of a legal document, and international money laundering." You have the right to remain silent. Don't lecture me about rights. Caleb shouted, leaping to his feet. He snatched the USB from the laptop and backed away, wild-eyed. You have no proof. Nothing in here ties me to any of it. On the contrary, Maya said coolly. You've just confessed on record. And your servers were shut down an hour ago. Thank you for confirming the Cayman link. Caleb turned to Vanessa, voice cracking with fury. You betrayed me, didn't you? Vanessa trembled. You lied to me, Caleb. You used me, and you nearly destroyed my mother. He stared at her as if seeing her for the first time, then bolted toward the back door. The agents intercepted him. In the struggle, the USB slipped from his grasp and clattered to the floor, stopping at Evelyn's feet. She bent, picked it up, and set it gently on the table. The chaos subsided. Rain drummed softly against the windows once more. Maya motioned for the evidence team to secure the room. Caleb was let out, handcuffed, his once slick composure now hollow. Vanessa sank into a chair, covering her face. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know it would go this far. Evelyn walked over, placed a steady hand on her daughter's shoulder. Knowing late is still better than never. What matters is you stopped. Maya approached, her tone both gentle and grave. Mrs. Marlowe, congratulations. Not many people your age could pull off a sting operation like this. But I'm afraid this isn't over yet. Evelyn frowned. What do you mean? Maya pulled up a file on her phone, an email fragment recovered from Caleb's encrypted server. The subject line read, If I disappear, contact MC. She knows about Falcon and the second fund. RM. Evelyn's heart tightened. Falcon, that was Richard's code name, wasn't it? Maya nodded. Yes. But the signature, RM, doesn't match his handwriting exactly. Analysis suggests. Someone imitated him, Evelyn finished. Someone who also knew about Falcon. Exactly, Maya said. We think there's another fund, larger than the 15 million. Perhaps one Richard created to protect someone, or to hide something. Vanessa lifted her head. You mean Dad was working with someone else? Maya hesitated. It's possible. We traced a new login to your home security network last night, after Caleb's arrest. Whoever it was, they knew Richard left clues somewhere in this house. Evelyn felt a chill travel up her spine. So, someone else is watching us? Maya's voice dropped. And they're looking for whatever Richard hid. The room went still. Outside, the rain thickened into a steady drumming. The hallway light cast a golden reflection on Richard's portrait, and for a fleeting moment, his painted eyes seemed to gleam, watching them all. Evelyn looked up at him. If you're still out there, she whispered, you planned all of this, didn't you? Vanessa's fingers trembled as she reached for her mother's hand. Mom, is this ever going to end? Evelyn squeezed her daughter's hand firmly. We'll see it through, no matter how deep it goes. Maya managed a faint, knowing smile. Mrs. Marlowe, I think you'd make a better agent than most I've worked with. Outside, the faint wail of an FBI siren echoed down the street. But inside that quiet home, a far greater storm was only beginning, one that would soon blur the line between truth, loyalty, and survival. That night, the rain refused to stop. Seattle lay trapped beneath a web of silver threads, the streetlights trembling in the reflections of wet glass. Inside the Marlowe house, Evelyn did not sleep. She sat by the window, watching the water slide down the pane, turning the world outside into streaks of blurred light. Between her fingers, she turned her wedding ring, a circle of gold that had never left her hand since the day Richard slipped it on. On the table lay the envelope Maya had given her before leaving. Inside, there was only a single printed page, an excerpt from the email the FBI had just decrypted. It read, Falcon 2, safehouse key embedded. Ask MC. Those two letters, MC, wouldn't stop echoing in her head. Maya Chen? Or someone else? She whispered to the dark, Ask M.C. What are you trying to tell me, Richard? If it was a clue, then it meant he wanted Maya to find something, or that he had left a message only Evelyn could decipher. Evelyn opened the old family photo album. Between the yellowed pages were pictures from the years when Richard still smiled with ease, his arm around her, standing before government buildings, meetings, and awards. At the very end, one photograph made her stop cold. Richard stood beside a weathered sign that read, Falcon Ridge Cabin, 1957. A log cabin. Their honeymoon retreat. The place he had once called his quiet corner of the world. She touched the photo gently. Safe house, she whispered. Of course. You always hid the loudest secrets in the quietest places. The next morning, Maya returned, with Daniel Brooks in tow. Evelyn spread the photo on the table. Falcon Ridge, she said. It's the only place Richard ever called a safe house. I think that's where he hid the second fund. Maya leaned over the photo. Where is it? Up in the Cascades, near Skycomish, Daniel replied. He mentioned it years ago, but I never went there. It's been abandoned for a long time. Maya nodded. Then that's where we're going. Tonight. Quietly. No agency communication. Evelyn frowned. Not through the bureau? Maya's expression hardened. We've had unauthorized access to our database. Someone inside the FBI is tracking every time we open the Marlowe file. If there's a mole, we can't risk alerting them. Daniel sighed. As Richard once said, not every enemy stands outside the gate. Evelyn pressed her lips together. Then let's go. They left after sundown. The black SUV cut through sheets of rain as it climbed into the mountains. The highway gave way to narrow, twisting roads lined with pine trees that rose like black walls on either side. Wind howled across the windshield, its voice hollow and ancient. Maya kept her eyes on the road, steady and focused. Daniel sat in the back with his laptop open, the glow from the screen faintly lighting his face. Evelyn stared out the window, watching the fog drift between the trees, her reflection a ghost among them. He loved this place, she said softly. Richard used to say the wind here sounded like the sea. When work became too much, he'd drive up, put on jazz, and stay awake all night. I never asked what he was working on. Maybe tonight we'll find out, Maya replied. 3 hours later, they reached it. Falcon Ridge Cabin sat half-hidden among the trees, its wooden roof silvered with age, windows coated in dust and cobwebs. The air smelled of pine resin, damp soil, and rust. Daniel forced the door open, the hinges cried out. Inside was darkness and the stale scent of time, old wood, mold, and forgotten paper. Maya swept her flashlight slowly across the room, a covered desk, picture frames fallen from the walls, a locked filing cabinet in the corner. Old Yale lock, she murmured. Simple enough. From her coat, she drew a small toolkit. With a few deft turns, click. The drawer creaked open. Inside was not paper, but a small wooden box, carved with the image of a falcon mid-flight. Evelyn ran her hand over it, recognizing the rough texture of Richard's handiwork. Dear Lord, she whispered. He really did prepare for this. Maya set it on the desk and gently lifted the lid. Inside was a metallic hard drive, and a thick envelope. On the envelope, written in Richard's hand. If you're reading this, it means they've come closer than I imagined. R. Evelyn opened it. No letter, just financial statements. Transfers between so-called humanitarian funds. Total, $40 million. Daniel's breath caught. Good God, the second fund. Not just that, Maya said, connecting the drive to her laptop. There's a list here, names, codes, some marked CBI, the Crown Bureau investigation. The Bureau's predecessor. Some of these people are still in service. Evelyn frowned. Richard, who were you protecting? Maya scrolled down, and froze. At the bottom of the list was her own name. M. Chen, Asset 2. For a moment, no one spoke. Daniel and Evelyn looked up at her. Maya's face went pale. That can't be right, she whispered. I never met him before this case. Daniel's voice was low. He marked you as asset too. In intelligence terms, that means a trusted collaborator. Are you sure you never worked with him? I joined the bureau a year after he died, Maya said shakily. He couldn't have known me. Unless someone told him. Evelyn studied her. Or maybe Richard knew you would come. He always believed some things happen ahead of time. Maya didn't answer. She stared at the glowing data on the screen, the code streaming like light through water. Then, ping. A new message flashed. Remote access detected. Damn it. Maya snapped. Someone's trying to breach the system. Disconnect now. But the laptop flickered violently, lights dancing across the keys. A message appeared. Unknown user, leave the box. You don't know what you're touching. Daniel yanked the power cable free. They're tracking us. Evelyn felt the floor vibrate, no, not her imagination. Outside, gravel crunched under heavy tires. Headlights swept through the cracks in the cabin walls. Maya pulled her gun. They followed us. Move. There's a back exit through the cellar, Daniel said. Go. Evelyn grabbed the wooden box, clutching it to her chest, and followed Daniel through the narrow passage behind the cabin. The cold night air hit her face like glass. Behind them, the roar of engines. Then gunfire, sharp, echoing through the pines. Maya's voice rang out, go. I'll cover you. They stumbled through the muddy trail toward the stream behind the cabin, hearts pounding. Daniel pulled Evelyn behind a boulder, both of them panting, rain and sweat mixing on their faces. She's still back there, Evelyn gasped. She'll make it, Daniel said, chest heaving. But we have to get this out. That's what she'd want. Evelyn held the box close. Richard, what have you left me? A fortune, or a curse? Far off, the faint wail of sirens. Daniel pulled out his phone, sending an emergency beacon. I've called it in. But whoever the mole is, they know we have something. They won't stop now. Evelyn's eyes were wet, though it was hard to tell from the rain. Then neither will I. 2 hours later, they returned to Seattle. Falcon Ridge cabin was now just a smudge of light lost in fog. Maya had been found, injured but alive, her arm bandaged. Inside the FBI's temporary field office, Evelyn sat across from her. The wooden box lay between them like a relic of truth too heavy to lift. This isn't just money, Maya said quietly. It's proof of a system, a financial shadow government that's been manipulating policy for decades. Richard uncovered it. And he paid the price. Evelyn gazed at the box, then up at the screen displaying Richard's photo, his calm eyes frozen in time. And what about us, Maya? She asked softly. What price do we pay now? Maya's expression was steady, her voice barely above a whisper. This time, Evelyn, we make them pay. Outside, the rain finally began to ease. The first faint light of dawn crept over the skyline, gray and uncertain. Evelyn touched the box and felt, for the briefest moment, a heartbeat, not her own, but the pulse of a story that was far from over. Night fell over the Seattle FBI field office, wrapping the building in a haze of fluorescent light. The hum of servers and the faint buzz of coffee machines filled the silence. Evelyn sat alone at the metal table, both hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. Across from her, Special Agent Maya Chin typed furiously, the shifting blue light from her laptop illuminating the dark circles beneath her eyes. Each line of code reflected in her pupils like ghosts. No trace of the remote hacker yet? Evelyn asked quietly. Maya shook her head. No. Whoever they are, they're good. Every time we shut one door, they open 3 more. She paused, squinting at the screen. But there's something strange. Evelyn leaned forward. What kind of strange? In the encrypted core, There's a subfile signed with a biometric key, Richard Marlowe's. Evelyn frowned. That's impossible. Richard died almost 2 years ago. Maya's voice dropped. And yet this signature was created 6 months ago. You can't fake a live biometric. It requires an active fingerprint scan. The words landed like stones in Evelyn's chest. Are you saying Richard is alive? I'm saying, Maya replied carefully, someone wants us to believe he is. And I need to know, who else had access to his biometric data? No one, Evelyn said. Then her voice faltered. Unless, the tech engineers Vanessa hired when they upgraded Richard's study after he died. Maya's fingers flew across the keys. If they cloned his prints, someone inside the bureau could be using them. I'll run a trace. Evelyn walked to the window. Beyond the glass, the city shimmered, wet, cold, alive. The reflections of skyscrapers trembled in the puddles below, like memories she couldn't hold steady. She whispered, Richard always said truth has a cost. I never realized how steep it could be. 4 a.m. The system finished processing. One name appeared on the screen. Credential, l.graves@fbi.gov. Maya read it aloud. Leonard Graves, Senior Legal Counsel for the Bureau. Evelyn turned sharply. Graves. Daniel said he used to work with Richard, didn't he? Maya nodded grimly. He did. If Graves is involved, it means this goes deep, internal clearance level. He's got access to every classified file. Evelyn's voice hardened. Then Richard trusted the wrong man. Before Maya could reply, the overhead lights flickered. An alarm blipped faintly from below. She looked up. Someone's in the evidence room. Maya stood, gun drawn. Stay here, Evelyn. I'll check it out. No, Evelyn rose, firm. I've spent my life being told to stay put. Not this time. Maya hesitated, then nodded once. Stay behind me. They moved down the corridor. The fluorescent lights stuttered, throwing long shadows across the tiled floor. The door to the evidence vault was slightly ajar, a narrow wedge of pale green light spilling through. Inside, a figure was bent over the cabinet, tall, coat draped across broad shoulders. FBI. Step away from the files. Maya's voice cut through the air. The man turned slowly. Evelyn froze. Daniel Brooks. He straightened, expression unreadable. Good evening, ladies. I was wondering how long it would take you to find me. Maya's gun didn't waver. Drop the file, Daniel. He smiled faintly. You're quick, Agent Chen. But you're chasing the wrong villain. I'm here to finish what Richard started. Evelyn's voice trembled, not from fear, but fury. You betrayed him. You used his death to hide your crimes. Daniel shook his head, almost gently. No, Evelyn. Falcon wasn't about greed. It was never just a laundering case. It was a funding system, a covert financial network that protected operatives working off the grid for our country. Richard and I built it together. But when he decided to expose it, I couldn't let that happen. Maya's eyes narrowed. So you killed him? Daniel's gaze flicked to her, soft, regretful. No. Richard isn't dead. He vanished, by his own design. He believed that by dying on paper, he could keep Evelyn safe. Evelyn's knees nearly gave out. He's alive? Perhaps, Daniel said quietly. But if you love him, don't go looking. Falcon's second fund protects people far more dangerous than you realize. If you expose it, you'll burn the only shield Richard left behind. Enough, Maya snapped. Daniel Brooks, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice, falsifying federal records, and treason. Daniel's lips curved into a sad smile. Ah, Maya Chen, MC. Now I understand why he named you. Richard saw something in you that even you don't. What are you talking about? She demanded. Daniel lifted his hand slightly. A small metallic click echoed. The power cut out. Darkness swallowed the room. Then, a flash. The crack of a gunshot. Evelyn fell to her knees. Maya pulled her behind a cabinet, shouting, "Stay down." Footsteps pounded toward the exit. Maya bolted after them, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. She caught sight of Daniel at the end of the hall, clutching something silver, a USB drive. "Stop," she yelled. He turned, gun raised. "Don't follow me. I don't want to hurt you." "It's too late." Maya fired. The bullet tore through his shoulder. Daniel collapsed, blood spreading beneath him like spilled ink. Evelyn ran up, breathless. "Daniel, stop. Where is he? Where's Richard?" Daniel looked up at her, face pale, voice barely audible. "Ask the USB, he left you the answer. But be careful, Evelyn, truth kills the ones who reach it." His eyes dimmed. The corridor filled with red-blue light from arriving agents. The next morning, gray fog wrapped the Seattle skyline. Inside a quiet bureau conference room, Evelyn and Maya sat before a laptop. Between them lay the USB Daniel had died to protect. Maya hesitated. "Are you sure you want to see this?" Evelyn nodded. "Richard once said, justice isn't light, it's fire. To keep it burning, you must be willing to get burned. Let's open it." The screen flickered to life. One file. Message_rm.mov. Richard Marlowe's face appeared, older, thinner, but unmistakably alive. His eyes, still kind, met hers through the lens. "Evelyn," he began, voice low and even. "If you're watching this, Daniel has failed, and Maya Chen has completed her part. I didn't die. I was extracted by the Agency for Protection. Falcon 2 isn't dirty money, it's a witness protection trust. It safeguards people like Maya, who risk everything for the truth. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you, but every lie I told was to keep you safe." He paused, eyes glistening. "I love you, Eve. If you want to see me again, come to Whitestone Bridge. March 17th. The video ended. Evelyn sat perfectly still, tears slipping down her cheeks. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. "He's alive." Evelyn nodded slowly, a trembling smile spreading. "And he still knows how to make me believe in the impossible." Outside, dawn broke in hesitant silver light. Evelyn stood, feeling, for the first time in years, like she could breathe freely. But deep down, she knew, one meeting could close the past forever, or open a door she might never shut again. Somewhere beyond the gray Seattle sky, a seagull cried, the cry of the falcon, calling her forward. The morning of March 17th broke cold and clean, as if the rain had finally washed the world into silence. Whitestone Bridge arched across the gray expanse of the Columbia River, its steel bones gleaming faintly beneath the first blush of sunrise. The air smelled of salt, pine, and beginnings. Evelyn Marlowe stood at the midpoint of the bridge, her wool coat buttoned to the collar, the wind tugging gently at her silver hair. In her hand, she held the small wooden box, the same one Richard had carved decades ago, the falcon engraved into its lid still sharp under her fingertips. Cars passed occasionally, their tires whispering over wet asphalt. But she barely noticed. Her eyes searched the far side of the bridge where fog met light, waiting. At 7:32 a.m., a black sedan pulled up quietly. The door opened, and a tall man stepped out, his movements slower, older, but achingly familiar. Richard Marlowe. He paused at the edge of the walkway, as though unsure if what he saw was real. Then, when their eyes met, he smiled, that same crooked, gentle smile that had anchored her through half a century of storms. Evelyn's breath caught. "You're real." He walked closer, his voice hoarse but steady. "I never stopped being real, Eve. I only disappeared so you could live." Tears welled in her eyes, not of anger, but release. "You let me mourn you. You let me believe I'd lost everything." Richard's gaze softened. "You had to. If you knew I was alive, they'd have found you too. The Falcon network went deeper than I ever imagined." Daniel wasn't supposed to betray it, but he believed exposure was the only way to end it. He wasn't entirely wrong. Evelyn shook her head. He killed people, Richard. He almost destroyed our family. Yes, Richard said quietly. And yet, he saved you in the end. They stood in silence for a moment. Below them, the river moved slow and heavy, carrying broken sunlight across its surface. Finally, Evelyn lifted the box between them. This was yours. You left it for me. Richard took it gently, opened the lid. Inside were the files of Falcon 2, now nothing more than data printed on fragile paper, edges curling slightly with age. I built this system to protect those who didn't have a voice, he said. Retired operatives. Elderly agents who'd been discarded by the government once their usefulness faded. I used secret channels to fund medical care and protection for them. That's what the money was always for. Evelyn blinked, the truth settling like morning dew. That's why you called it Falcon, to help those who'd fallen. He smiled faintly. You always understood things I could never explain. She took a slow breath. And now? What happens to all of this? He turned toward the horizon. It's yours now, Eve. The Bureau can't keep it, they'd bury it again. But you can rebuild it. Make it public. Transparent. Turn it into something that helps people without hiding in the shadows. Her hand trembled as she touched his arm. You mean? Yes, he said softly. Elder safe. A foundation that protects those left behind, the elderly, the forgotten. The people like us. Evelyn laughed quietly through tears. You always had a flair for poetic justice. He reached for her hand, his fingers warm despite the wind. Poetic justice is the only kind that lasts. They stood like that for a while, two souls bound by time, mistakes, and love. When the first rays of sunlight pierced through the mist, Richard said, they'll still be watching, you know. There are people who won't want this story told. I'm not afraid anymore, Evelyn said simply. I've already lived through silence. The truth is lighter than grief. A single gull cried above them, cutting through the cold air. Richard stepped back, his expression bittersweet. I can't stay. They'll come for me if I do. But I needed you to see me one last time, to know that everything I did for us. Evelyn's voice broke. Where will you go? Somewhere quiet, he said. Maybe Falcon Ridge again. Maybe nowhere. Just promise me you'll keep flying. She reached up, touched his cheek. I already am. He smiled, then turned and walked toward the fog. The mist swallowed him in seconds, leaving only the echo of footsteps, and the faint glint of the falcon engraved in the wood. Evelyn stood there for a long time, the wind carrying his scent, cedar, ink, and memory. Then she turned back toward the city. 2 years later, in a quiet corner of Seattle, a bronze plaque gleamed outside a restored community center. The Marlowe Foundation, home of the Elder Safe Initiative. Because dignity should outlive youth. Inside, volunteers helped senior citizens file digital benefit claims, restore pensions, and trace forgotten funds. A framed photograph hung in the lobby, Richard and Evelyn on their wedding day, smiling at a world still young enough to dream. At the front desk, Evelyn, now 81, sat with a cup of tea beside her, reading an old letter in Richard's handwriting. It ended with a line she never grew tired of rereading. If love survives time, it becomes truth. And truth, my Eve, never dies. Outside, the wind swept through the maples, lifting a single feather into the sunlight. The falcon still flew. Author's note. When I began writing The Falcon Shadow, I wanted to tell a story not about espionage or money, but about something quieter, and perhaps more dangerous, the cost of silence. Evelyn Marlowe was never meant to be a hero in the traditional sense. She doesn't run, shoot, or fight in the way thrillers often demand. Instead, she endures. Her courage lies in refusing to vanish, even when the world around her decides she's no longer needed. In many ways, Evelyn represents an entire generation, the men and women who built their families, who survived wars both literal and emotional, only to find themselves slowly erased by time and technology. Through her, I wanted to ask, when does protection become control? When does love turn into ownership? And what happens when the truth arrives too late, but still matters? Richard Marlowe's secret project, Falcon, was never really about covert funds or politics. It was about legacy, the kind that outlives power and speaks for those who no longer can. The falcon, in ancient symbolism, represents vision and resurrection. It soars above the fog but always returns home. Like love that survives deception. Like truth that refuses to stay buried. The Elder Safe Foundation, born from Evelyn's final act of courage, was inspired by real initiatives that fight elder exploitation and restore independence to those who've been silenced. To me, that's the quiet revolution this story carries, the idea that redemption can begin at any age, that justice has no expiration date, and that dignity is not a gift, it's a right. If you take anything from Evelyn's journey, let it be this. Even after the betrayals, the losses, and the storms, we all deserve one more sunrise, one last chance to look across the bridge and see someone waiting on the other side. And if love, as Richard once wrote, survives time to become truth, then truth, at its heart, is simply love that refused to die. Dove for everyone still brave enough to begin again, no matter the years behind them.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. See you again.